$100,000. The air in the cramped dorm room at Blackwood University seemed to freeze. Three pairs of eyes stared at Seraphina Blackwood, who had just uttered the words with a radiant smile as if she had just announced she was buying pizza for dinner. Her platinum blonde hair shimmered under the dim yellow light, a strange contrast to the simple university hoodie she was wearing. Seraphina, or Sarah as her friends called her, was an enigma. She was beautiful, wealthy, and always surrounded by friends. She drove the latest Tesla, wore clothes others only saw on fashion runways, and exuded an aura of someone who had never wanted for anything. But what made her even more captivating was the veil of mystery that surrounded her. No one knew where she really came from. She never talked about her family, revealing very little about herself, but she never hesitated to spoil her friends with expensive gifts or lavish trips. $100,000 for each of you, Sarah repeated, her voice laced with excitement, breaking the dead silence. You heard me right. Maya, her bubbly and easygoing roommate, was the first to react. Her eyes widened, the spoon in her frozen yogurt clattering to the floor. Are you kidding me, Sarah? 100,000, like real money? Of course it's real money, Sarah chuckled. She sat down on the edge of the bed of Chloe, the other roommate, who was still silently processing the information. My dad is about to open a new, ultra-luxurious wellness resort on our family's estate, and he's throwing a huge party this weekend to celebrate. There will be politicians, influencers, celebrities. Anyone who's anyone will be there. Maya and Chloe exchanged an excited glance. This was the first time Sarah had ever talked about her family, let alone invited them to meet her parents. But that's not all, Sarah continued, her voice filled with excitement. My dad said that as a welcome gift, he would give each of my friends a seed investment of $100,000. So you can start any project you've ever dreamed of. He said it would be enough to change your lives. Chloe's heart tightened with suspicion. Why now? Why the sudden invitation and $100,000? The number was absurd. It was like something out of a fairy tale rather than real life. I'll have to ask my parents first, she said cautiously. Chloe was the practical one in the group, always careful and thoughtful. Sarah's expression changed for a moment, a flicker of disappointment crossing her piercing blue eyes. Oh, that's not necessary, she replied quickly. Actually, the invitation is only valid for 3 people. I've already planned everything. She smiled, dispelling Chloe's doubts. Don't worry, Chloe. You'll be fine. It's just for a weekend. We'll be back before you know it. And I promise to bring you back a special gift, Sarah said. Chloe didn't like the way Sarah dismissed her so easily, but Maya's radiant joy only made her sadder, a deeper kind of sadness. Sarah stood up, saying she was going to tell Isabel and Olivia, her 2 other friends from the art history department, while Chloe and Maya stayed in the room. Can you believe it? We're going to Seraphina's huge estate? Maya squealed, her eyes shining. Chloe forced a smile, but anxiety tightened in her stomach. Are you sure this is a good idea, Maya? What if your parents come to visit? Besides, you're going to a place you don't even know. Maya rolled her eyes. You're always so overprotective, Chloe. I can make my own decisions. You don't own me. I just don't want anything to happen to you. You have to think this through, Chloe replied, her voice filled with concern. That evening, the day before the trip, Olivia found Isabel in their common room packing her suitcase. Isabel, or Izzy, was reserved but intelligent. A girl who always knew how to get what she wanted, using her intelligence to achieve her goals, even if it meant betraying her friends. Izzy's face looked unusually calm, but Olivia could sense the underlying excitement. Are you sure you want to go to this party, Izzy? Olivia asked, her tone gentle but with a hidden agenda. Olivia was beautiful. Everyone noticed her beauty, but she hid a secret. Despite always smiling and being cheerful for Sarah, deep down, Olivia dreamed of being as famous and wealthy as her. She was willing to do anything to get that life. Izzy stopped folding her clothes and looked up, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. Of course. Why not? Sarah has promised us so much. This could change everything. Olivia smirked almost mockingly. Or it could be a trap. You know how mysterious she is. Do you really trust her? Olivia asked, hoping to sow a seed of doubt in Izzy's mind. If Izzy decided not to go, Olivia knew she would get all the attention and perhaps the favor of Sarah's family. Izzy shrugged. I don't need to trust her. I just need to be there when the opportunity comes. Besides, you're going too, right? What's wrong? Are you afraid of missing out on something? Although Olivia tried to convince herself that she wasn't jealous of Sarah. The truth always gnawed at her heart. This was her chance to shine, to finally take the spotlight. Izzy's lips curved into a sly smile. I could say the same to you. You're scared, aren't you? Scared that I'll be the one to make the right connections, not you. You've always wanted to be like Sarah, to be the center of attention. I see the way you look at her. You think this party is your golden ticket, don't you? Olivia was losing control of the conversation, and Izzy had seen through her game. Fine, Olivia said, her voice slightly irritated, but don't say I didn't warn you. On Thursday morning, the day of departure, Chloe stood by the window watching Sarah's sleek black sedan glide away, carrying Maya, Izzy, and Olivia towards an unknown land. Something deep inside her screamed that this was a bad idea, a very bad idea. Maya's excited smile and wave from the car window seemed so distant, like a final image before everything plunged into darkness. Chloe clutched her phone, a cold sense of unease creeping through her body. She could only hope that her gut feeling was wrong. The Tesla glided silently, taking them away from the familiar brick buildings of the Blackwood University campus. Maya was glued to the window, oohing and awing at every rolling hill and quaint farmhouse that dotted the New England countryside. Olivia, in the back seat, was lost in a daydream about the life she could have if she made the right connections at this party. She imagined penthouses in Manhattan, shopping sprees in Paris, a world where her envy of Seraphina would be transformed into the admiration of others for her. Only Isabel was silent, her sharp eyes observing the changing landscape, calculating every angle, weighing every possible outcome. After almost 2 hours of driving, the familiar highway gave way to smaller, winding roads. The forest began to thicken the vibrant autumn leaves, forming a canopy that blotted out the sky. They were driving deeper into what seemed to be an untamed wilderness. Sarah, are you sure we're on the right road? Maya asked, her initial excitement starting to be tinged with a hint of anxiety. There's nothing out here. We're almost there, Seraphina replied, the smile never leaving her lips, but her eyes were fixed on the road ahead. Finally, she turned onto an unmarked road, hidden behind a row of ancient oak trees. The gravel path led them deeper into the woods, and then there it was. The building was not a wellness resort. It was a massive mansion, a towering Gothic structure of dark granite and soaring stained glass windows that looked like something plucked from the Scottish Highlands and dropped in the middle of a New England forest. Stone gargoyles stood guard on the roof, their empty eyes seeming to follow the approaching car. Oh my God, Sarah, Maya whispered in awe. This place is unbelievable. I didn't know your family was like this, Isabel added, her usual composure finally cracking with astonishment. Seraphina just smiled, a distant, unreadable smile. Welcome home, she said as the car pulled to a stop in front of a massive oak door. The door opened almost immediately, and a man with salt and pepper hair and a warm smile stepped out. He was dressed in an expensive cashmere sweater and perfectly tailored trousers. Seraphina, my dear, he boomed, his voice deep and resonant. He enveloped Sarah in a hug before turning to the others. And you must be Maya, Isabel, and Olivia. I'm so glad to finally meet my daughter's wonderful friends. The girls exchanged nervous glances, but his friendly demeanor put them at ease. They stepped inside, led by Mr. Blackwood. The grand foyer was cavernous, with a massive crystal chandelier sparkling overhead and a sweeping double staircase of mahogany curving up to the second floor. Everything was immaculate, yet despite the opulence, there was a strange stillness to the house. Always craving a life of luxury, Olivia couldn't help but ask, "And Seraphina's mother, where is she?" Mr. Blackwood's face lit up with pride. "Ah, she's abroad, my dear girl. But don't worry, she'll be arriving tomorrow evening with the president's advisor just in time for the party. You'll get to meet her soon." The girls smiled, seduced by the idea of mingling with such influential people. Everything seemed too perfect. You see, Seraphina is my only daughter. Mr. Blackwood continued, his voice softening with affection. I love her more than anything in the world, and I've made sure she has everything she desires. That's why I told her to invite you here so you can have fun, relax before the big party. I want you to feel at home. They nodded, gradually feeling at ease. This man seemed genuine. Mr. Blackwood gestured to two men in black suits who stood silently in the background. There's just one small rule, he added in a casual tone. No phones during your stay. No phones, Olivia repeated, a worried frown creasing her forehead. Mr. Blackwood chuckled, waving his hand as if to dismiss her concerns. Yes, no phones. I want you to disconnect to truly enjoy the beauty of the estate. You'll see it's liberating. I've already made the call, and in a few hours cell service will be blocked in the vicinity to avoid any distractions. Isabel and Olivia exchanged an uncertain look. Maya, at first surprised, then shrugged. After all, they were guests in a luxurious house, and it was just for a weekend. But just as Mr. Blackwood was speaking, Maya felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. A call from Chloe. Without thinking, she excused herself. I'll just take this, it'll be quick. She stepped a few feet away and answered. Chloe, we're here. You won't believe how beautiful this place is, but she didn't get to finish her sentence. One of the silent men from before suddenly appeared beside her, his hand outstretched. Excuse me, miss, he said in a firm but polite voice. The boss's orders. No phones. Maya froze. Reluctantly, she handed him her phone. She only managed to hear Chloe's worried voice say, Maya, what's going on? Before the man ended the call and walked away with the device. When she returned to the others in the living room, she saw Olivia and Isabel handing their phones to the other man. Something felt wrong, but she kept quiet, not wanting to spoil the mood. On the other end, Chloe was completely confused, but thought the interruption might be due to a reception issue. The staff took their luggage and showed each of them to their own room. That evening, the girls had dinner with Mr. Blackwood. By the end of the meal, they were relaxed, almost trusting. The day after tomorrow is the big party, he announced. Tonight, get some rest, enjoy the peace and quiet. The first night seemed quite normal, but when the lights went out, a strange coldness seemed to seep into the house. In the middle of the night, Olivia woke up shivering despite the thick blanket. She felt a sense of unease, as if something invisible was in the room with her. She tried to calm herself. It must be the stress of being in a new place. The next morning, Seraphina was gone. She probably went into town to help with the preparations, Maya said, not too worried. But as the day wore on, Sarah didn't return, and when the girls asked Mr. Blackwood about her, his answers were vague. That evening, things started to get really strange. The party was supposed to be the next day, but there were no signs of preparation, no guests arriving, no decorations, no staff that seemed busy. A heavy silence hung over the mansion. When Olivia dared to ask one of the maids, an older woman with downcast eyes, the woman became visibly uncomfortable. Don't worry, everything is under control, she said hastily, avoiding Olivia's gaze. Then she scurried away. Olivia's sense of unease grew. You're imagining things, Isabel said, lounging languidly on a velvet armchair in the library. The Blackwoods are rich. They probably do everything at the last minute. You'll see. But that night the whispers began. Olivia, lying in bed, was startled awake by someone whispering her name. At first she thought she was dreaming, but the voice came again, clearer, more urgent. Olivia, Olivia. She sat up, her heart pounding in her chest. Her eyes scanned the dark room. Nothing, no one. She slowly got out of bed, tiptoeing to the door. The whispers stopped. She flung the door open. The hallway was empty, silent as a tomb. Then she heard it again. Olivia. This time it came from the end of the hall, from a door leading to the basement that she had noticed earlier that day. Her blood ran cold. She quickly slammed the door, rushed back to bed, and pulled the covers over her head, her body trembling uncontrollably. The next morning, Maya wasn't at the breakfast table. She probably got up early for a walk. Olivia tried to reassure herself, but her voice trembled. Isabel said nothing, but a cold calculation flickered in her eyes. They searched the entire mansion. Not a trace of Maya. They knocked on Mr. Blackwood's door, no answer. When they finally found the maid from before, the woman refused to look them in the eye. "You should leave," she whispered, her voice trembling with fear. "Something terrible is happening. You should have never come here." At that moment, Olivia knew that something was terribly wrong. In the afternoon, Seraphina reappeared, but she wasn't herself. The smile was gone. The charm was gone, replaced by a vacant, icy stare. She said nothing about where she had been, and when they asked about Maya, she completely ignored them, simply staring at them with soulless eyes. Isabel and Olivia looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They had to run. Now. They didn't pack. They didn't make a sound. They slipped out the back door, their hearts pounding in their chests. The estate was surrounded by a dense, seemingly impenetrable forest. Just as they passed through the wrought iron back gate, they heard hurried footsteps behind them. Mr. Blackwood and 3 guards were chasing them. He was no longer the kind host they had met. His face was contorted with rage, a primal fury in his eyes. As they ran for their lives through the trees, their hearts tight with fear, the harsh reality hit them. No one was coming to save them. They hadn't told their families anything. No one knew where they were. Seraphina's sweet lies had condemned them. They had been running for a few minutes, trying to escape the shadow of Mr. Blackwood, the man who now seemed unstoppable. Isabel stumbled, falling to her knees. I can't run anymore," she gasped, desperate. Olivia, her breath coming in ragged gasps, stopped and turned to her, her eyes wide with panic. "Get up, Izzy. We don't have time. We have to keep going." But Isabel didn't move. Her face was a mask of panic and a cold resolve. "We're not going to make it, both of us," she said, her voice chillingly steady. "You know that. But if one of us distracts him, maybe the other can get away." Olivia was stunned, her breath catching in her throat. A sacrifice. Who would be the sacrifice? Isabel gave a bitter smile. I sacrifice you." Before Olivia could react, Isabel shoved her violently. Olivia fell backward, hitting the ground hard, stunned and in shock. She looked up to see Isabel's back as she ran in the opposite direction. The betrayal was a knife to the heart. And at that moment, a figure emerged from between the trees. Mr. Blackwood. Isabel didn't even have time to scream. He was on her in an instant, his hands around her throat. He lifted her off the ground as if she weighed nothing more than a feather. Olivia, still on the ground, watched in trembling horror, holding her breath. She saw Isabel's body convulse and then go limp, lifeless, thrown to the ground like a ragged doll. And Olivia, crawling on all fours, understood that Isabel's betrayal might have just saved her life. A few moments passed, but the anguish in Olivia's heart was suffocating. She had to survive. Tears streamed down her face as she crawled through the forest, her body racked with fear. She could feel Mr. Blackwood's presence very close. She was trapped, exhausted, on the verge of despair. Mr. Blackwood was only a few feet away from her. Suddenly, 2 figures burst out of the bushes, tackling Mr. Blackwood to the ground. It was the police. A wave of relief so intense it was painful washed over Olivia as the firm hands of the police officers pulled her to her feet. Their flashlights cut through the darkness of the forest, illuminating Mr. Blackwood's lifeless face as he was handcuffed, the fury gone, replaced by a terrifying emptiness. Not far away, Isabel's body lay still on the damp leaves, a brutal reminder of the price of betrayal. "You're safe now," an officer said, his voice the first normal, real thing Olivia had heard in almost 3 days. In the speeding patrol car, a warm blanket wrapped around her shoulders, Olivia was still shaking. She recounted everything in a disjointed narrative, the images of the mansion, of Maya's disappearance, of Seraphina's soulless gaze, and of the terrifying escape through the woods. How did you know to come?" she whispered. The officer in the passenger seat turned to look at her, his eyes full of sympathy. "A friend of yours, Chloe Vance. She's the reason we're here." He explained that after the abrupt phone call, Chloe had grown increasingly worried. 2 days of complete silence had turned that worry into sheer terror. Maya's parents had called Chloe, and in a panic she had lied, saying Maya was busy studying for an exam. But the guilt had gnawed at her. Finally unable to bear it any longer, she had called Maya's parents back and confessed everything. They had gone to the university together, demanding that the administration provide information about Seraphina Blackwood. And that's when the first horrifying truth was revealed. After a thorough search of the records, the registrar looked up with a confused expression. "I'm sorry," she said, "but there is no student named Seraphina Blackwood in our school." Chloe's heart stopped. Seraphina had never been a student. She was a predator who had used friendship as bait. Maya's family immediately called the police. With that disturbing information and the help of the cell phone company, the police were able to pinpoint the location of Maya's last call. The signal came from a remote rural area on the outskirts of a dense forest. It was their only lead, and it had led them just in time to save Olivia's life. At the police station, Mr. Blackwood sat in the interrogation room, his face twisted into a strange, almost serene smile, as if he was no longer afraid. 2 detectives questioned him relentlessly. Why had he lured these girls to his mansion? What had happened to Maya? Where was Seraphina? Mr. Blackwood remained silent. His gaze was distant, but when one of the detectives mentioned his daughter's name, his mask cracked. A shadow passed over his eyes. "My daughter, Seraphina." He shook his head, a cold smile playing on his lips. "I don't have a daughter." The detectives exchanged a puzzled look. "Then who is she?" Mr. Blackwood's expression changed abruptly. His gaze became fixed. His voice was a whisper, a chilling confession that filled the silence of the room. "Seraphina is not human. She is an entity, one of the spirits that wander between worlds. They know how to disguise themselves to take human form. They live among us, and no one suspects a thing. I have used them for years. They bring me what I need." He closed his eyes for a moment. But this time it changed the rules of the game. "I'm not in control anymore." He leaned towards them, his eyes wide with an almost childlike terror. "They choose praise like you, who want what they can't have." "So, what becomes of the girls?" one of the detectives asked in a hesitant voice. Mr. Blackwood smiled coldly. "They disappear," he whispered. "They find other praise. You'll never see Seraphina again." The room fell silent. Then suddenly he began to laugh, a muffled laugh at first that grew louder and louder, a mad laugh that echoed through the room. "I shouldn't have said that," he muttered between laughs. "I should never have said it." His body suddenly tensed, then convulsed as if an invisible force had seized him. "The spirits, they know. They know I broke the rules." Suddenly Mr. Blackwood jumped up from his chair, knocking over the table and chairs violently. He rushed towards the door. His laughter turned into a crazed scream that echoed through the corridors of the police station. The officers tried to stop him, but he was too fast. He escaped them, running out into the night. And just as he ran into the middle of the road, headlights tore through the darkness. The screech of tires was too late. The impact was brutal, a dry thud, a body thrown into the air. Mr. Blackwood landed a few meters away, motionless. His laughter had ceased. The officers ran to him, but it was too late. Olivia was never the same again. She had survived, but the nightmares never ended. The whispers were still there, invisible but constant. Maya's body, despite all the searches conducted in the forest and around the mansion, was never found. Some temptations are just traps. Traps dressed in luxury, ready to devour anyone who gets too close. The devil doesn't always wear a scary mask. Sometimes it appears in the form of everything you've ever dreamed of having. And the most dangerous traps are the ones we willingly walk into. Sometimes the people you think you know were never really human at all.